still hear me well, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, folks. So I haven't started marking your first assignment. We will mark that pretty soon. Kate, we missed you in the assignment test run. I think you were actually the one that asked us to do that. But obviously you have you had a look at that recording?
Um, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but I will go through it.
Yeah, all right. So you're just busy. Yeah, so what we did is we sort of used the session as a mock, and I must tell you the gents found it quite beneficial, if I can say that. Looking at how you would typically tackle something from a research perspective. I also want to point out while we are busy with housekeeping stuff, guys, that there's the idea with ICE is if you miss an ICE, you can catch up. So I have populated your module page with those 2 ICE tasks that we did. Brad, I think someone like you probably attended both. Um, Kate, I don't know if you missed some of them. Yeah, but then you can catch up and do the ICE task on ARC under the discussion forum. The idea is that I want all of you to get your 10%, as I've said earlier. So keep an eye on that. Yes, we'll look at ICE, we'll look at the closing date and so on. Best thing, first prize is to get your ICE mark in class. But yes, there is a way to then also catch up on that. So yeah, I haven't marked. We'll give you a bit of feedback. And what I will probably do is give you some individual feedback probably next week. Give you individual feedback on your submission. That's a handy and a very constructive use of time. And in that submission, tell you, listen, you are on the right track with this, do a bit more of that, do less of that, be careful for this. Going forward, we know that the next submission now is a group one. So you guys are obviously in the group. There is a classmate registered, which I have not seen. So it looks like it's the 3 of you who are registered. So you 3 will also then do the group assignment. What I want to say also, in terms of your submissions on Turnitin, there was an old benchmark idea that came from the SafeAssign days where we said 25% similarity is acceptable. It is high. It's way too high, guys. It's way too high for postgrad students. I would like to see your similarities way, way, way below that. I wanna see similarities in the single digit sort of ballpark. Then just another very sobering concern about the use of AI. So we've seen I've seen with other modules and other campuses as submissions are starting to come in that AI is treated very seriously. The process, if AI is flagged, the lecturer would stop marking the initial mark when a student submission is flagged is 0, pending the investigation of what the AI offense or plagiarism offense entailed. It's not an enjoyable journey. It's not a pleasant situation when your submission gets flagged either for plagiarism or for the incorrect or undisclosed use of AI. So guys, remember, I think this is what I want to leave with you. AI is not your friend. It's not your friend in terms of what you are busy with as academics. Yes, you can look at the policies. There's a document published that they call the guidelines for responsible AI use. It's about declaring, about not letting AI do the work for you. What I'm saying is we are not trying to make you guys into AI specialists. We are trying to make you guys, help you guys grow into sound, very, very capable academic researchers. And that's got nothing to do with AI. So, some examples that I've seen is where students use AI to paraphrase their work. In other words, you use it as a language editor. You have to declare it. It is going to pick it up. It is going to flag it. Again, if one could steer away from that, it's better. If you end up in a situation where your text is generated by AI, it will also be detected. Now, using AI to clean up your document and paraphrase your document is one thing. It's a less serious quote unquote offense, although it will flag your submission. But when you are in the domain of having AI generate the actual text that you submit, that's a serious offense, which could have different consequences. Among others, your submission could be capped at a certain level and that sort of thing. So AI, yeah, I want to tell you guys, we can't push AI away. We don't want to push it away. It is here. We have to embrace it. But in hardcore academic scholarly work, where we try to evaluate your skill as a researcher, your skill as an author of academic discourse, you don't want AI. We don't want to see AI taking and filling that role where we want to evaluate your skills, where it's your thing that we actually want to see. Brad, I see there's connection problems. Are you still there?
How's it, Doc? No, I'm just saying Cameron's struggling to join.
Oh, Cameron
There's
is
just
struggling.
connection issues from his side.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what you put
Doctor, I
in
actually
the
just
chat.
want to ask a question. I just want to ask a question. When I was in UP, one of my mates, we also had quite a research-based assignment, and we used Turnitin from day one
Yeah,
in Pretoria,
yeah.
and they came back. I think it was 23% or something like that was AI in his assignments, but he did not use AI. Well, apparently from what he said. Are there
So
issues where there's mistakes with AI?
yes, we can have false positives. So it is a
Mm,
possibility. So
mm,
what I want to say to you is this. Obviously, if that's the case, then the
mm,
investigation would get his name in the clear, right? Because the
mm,
investigation looking into it would then probably say, listen, it was flagged with some
mm.
percentage, but following the investigation, it came up as a false positive or something of that sort. So I think we're going to see it. In
Yeah,
fact, I know we're gonna see that sort of thing. Um, I think what is important is to say that we're not going to penalize people uh, unmerited. It's the same with similarity. So when you've got your similarity, it's the same on Turnitin as we had it on SafeAssign. You click on the report, there's a percentage, but there's a nice breakdown where we can
yeah,
see, I don't know if you guys can see it from your side, but we can see exactly what the similarity entails. And I mean, even with those tools, you would sometimes have similarities flagged for references, for headings. We've seen that.
yes,
So a simple click by the lecturer on the little report says, all right, no, this is fine. The student is not going to be penalized in any way. And that will then show us, listen, no, there is reason for concern, or no, it's nothing. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes, where stuff like references are flagged, or headings are flagged, or that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
we definitely look beyond the initial percentage, Brad.
Yeah, because they still did a whole, I think it was like a 5 or 6 month investigation into him to double check if he did or not, and he still carried on saying, no, guys, like I didn't do it. And then obviously eventually came out that he didn't. But just because of the 23 or 20 something percent, they
No, it's
literally just stopped marking his stuff, and he waited 6 months for this. And
yeah.
there was a big issue with the education department.
I think it's early days in the academic world, and people are working on machines and better machines, and policies are written and rewritten. So AI, good evening, Cameron, good to see you. AI is a bit of a slippery slope. Hence, my advice to you guys would be just avoid it as best you can.
Yeah.
Do the work. Um, the old idea of, listen, avoiding the shark bite injury would be stay out of the ocean. That's a foolproof way to do it. You can study the documentation that is published by the IIE on responsible AI use. Cameron, can you hear me well? Let's continue. So be careful of that. Then the group assignment. Let's have a look at that. I'm going to share the group assignment with you guys. Oh my goodness, now it's funny. Okay, now 365 is giving me problems. Let me just see if I can get into things here. Assignment 2. Okay. Using Microsoft 365 between different accounts is sometimes a bit of a pain. Okay. I can't seem to share that now. What I want to tell you with regards to the group assignment, some important pointers, and Cameron, this is specifically for you, where you asked, could we touch on that? If you have specific questions, you're welcome to ask me that. You guys will work together on this. Now, something that I would advise is that you look at, and when we look at individual feedback and that sort of thing next week, you're going to get an idea of perhaps who's good with what. Sometimes there's a group member that says, listen, I'm very good with language editing. Someone else might say, I'm very good for sorting out references and checking references. That's my thing. Someone else might say, listen, I like to edit a document and get it into a nice readable format. So you guys can maybe try and use your skills, put it together in a group. Group work is difficult. It is painful. We put you in a group to really simulate a real life situation. Guys, when you're in a workplace, when you're in your place where you grow your career, you're going to work with people that are different than you, think different than you, have different ways. Sometimes you work with people that frustrate you, irritate you. You're someone that wants to do something in this way, but you're going to work with people that does it the other way. So there's that degree of learning to work with and collaborate with others to get something to a final goal which is beneficial to everyone. So that was intentionally brought into the program. The outcomes of the group assignment would then be the normal soft copy submission. I don't want everyone to submit. Please, guys, decide on someone to submit. And I only want that one submission. I'm not going to say it's a group leader. Let's say it's a group representative. So there's only that one submission where one person then submits on behalf of the group. On the cover page, please make sure that everyone's names and student numbers are there. And then something to keep in mind. So everything that we said, everything we shared, remember that session I shared on academic writing, it was an assessment support session. I can't remember if it was session 5 or 6 or it was a different one, but it was an important one. Go back to that and look at all the things that I taught you guys in terms of tackling academic work. That still applies to every submission you make. One of the big things that you must be mindful of when you do a group presentation or a group submission is that now you're putting stuff together that was compiled by different people, because normally you're going to say, listen, let's distribute the workload. In other words, Brad is going to do a section, Kate's going to do a section, Cameron's going to look at a section. Now, when you combine all of this, please make sure that you give me a paper that is coherent. In other words, I don't want to see a submission that looks like it's been authored by 3 different people. Does that make sense, guys? So you have to look at some sort of an editing, a language editing, grammar editing process where someone just puts this whole thing in the same sort of academic tone. I don't want to see the evidence of different authors that contributed to this document. So please be mindful of that. A document that is coherent, neat, readable, logical, and all the other things, right from the cover page, the detailed table of contents, everything in the document in terms of styling, your references, referencing style errors. Guys, I had a cohort now of about 23 students, and from them, only 3 was not penalized with the 5 or 10% referencing style errors. You know, some of them tell me, "Yo, sir, we checked it, but we can't understand how that sneaked in." Guys, check the work, double check it, triple check it. You will be penalized for every single thing. Comma, space, italics, we went through that, right? So you don't want to lose marks unnecessarily for referencing style. Okay. Then there's a presentation component. We will do the presentation here in this platform. And the idea is that each one of you, you'll see in the rubric, it's detailed. I think it's a 60-40 ratio. There's also a peer review, and I want to touch on that lightly and quickly, please, and tell you what my take on that is, guys. The presentation is important, so it's a large component of the actual final mark. The presentation will require all group members to participate. So you're not allowed to say, listen, I'm not good at talking, I don't want to talk, so I'm going to sit out. Everyone must take part in the actual presentation. I would be careful not to necessarily put the whole submission into the presentation. It depends, and I want you guys to use your judgment. If the soft submission is a massive document with lots of stuff, which means we're gonna present here for a full 40 minutes, that's overkill. It's completely unnecessary, guys. I want to assess your skill as a presenter, and we don't need all that much to do that. So it might also come down to that you maybe present a section. Remember, I've got your submitted copy, so I've got the content in actual fact. You're not giving me all the content in the presentation. It's not necessary. I'm going to leave that to you guys. I want to leave that to you to work with that in an intelligent manner. What I'm saying is it would be allowable, permissible to deal with sections of the actual submission and let someone handle a particular section and not necessarily try and dump the whole submission in that presentation. Again, I'm going to leave that to you guys. Then there's a peer review section. Now, I want to tell you historically, I've had some issues with the peer review in that students use the peer review in some instances to get back at a buddy, at a classmate. And it went to a place where someone didn't get along with someone and now they gave them a bad or a poor peer review score. So I don't think that's the purpose of it. I think the peer review, guys, is simply to say, look, we've got A, B, and C members in this group. If A, B, or C did not pull his weight, did not pull her weight, the peer review makes allowance for us to penalize that member to a certain degree. In other words, you're telling me, sir, this person did not attend any of our meetings where we planned the submission. So this person did not submit their stuff on time. So this person submitted stuff, but it was so poor quality. We had to redo, we had to rework. It was just a hassle to get along with this person. And remember, folks, if that's the case, then the other members would pretty much be in agreement about that. Then I would see the same sort of review from other members. So yeah, just be mindful of that. Don't get what's the word I'm looking for? Don't get petty. What's the word about the peer reviews? Treat each other like adults. What I'm saying is don't use it just to nail someone. If there's really merited room for penalizing someone, which we can deem appropriate, then by all means we can do that. All right. So there will be a soft copy submission that you will submit. One person, please, one representative on ARC, and then in close proximity to that, we will handle the actual presentation component. So I'll have a look at the dates. I don't have them with me now, but the presentation will fall close to that to the actual submission. They will be in close proximity because I need to capture and incorporate all those marks, and then we'll get back on that, guys. And that's the story. Please tell me. I know there was a question asked. When will the exam dates be finalized? The PAS I have, I think it still says TBC to be confirmed. When you guys see anything, please keep me in the loop. Sometimes we miss announcements, and you guys get something that I miss. So please, if there's stuff happening that you are aware of, please bring it to us, to our attention as well. If you should see changes or updates in the PAS, if you see stuff like exam briefs, if it's a pre-seen exam, they might publish an exam brief that we're going to use, that we're going to work with prior, in preparation for the exam, that sort of thing. So keep an eye on those, guys, and also notify me and send that to me. So you're going to use visuals. I'm going to tell you quickly, and I don't know when we might get back to this again in our next session, but the use of visuals, the biggest mistake, if I can give you this pointer, that I've seen with visuals is that people, A, want to make them, I think, flashy, maybe aesthetically appealing, and then it gets overboard. So be careful. Don't try and use too much funny colors or fonts or effects or funny stuff. We are in a professional environment. So yes, we can make it interesting, but we don't want to make it overwhelmingly, because it's not going to end up being something that is aesthetically pleasing. So avoid funny fonts, colors, effects, those typewriter things or gunshots or cannon shots going off. That's not a good idea. Then please don't give me cluttered slides when you put together your presentation. You are not supposed to put all the information that you want to convey in the slide. So here's the thing, shortcut. Students will literally copy a paragraph from the actual paper submission and put that whole paragraph, copy and paste it into a slide. Your audience member is frustrated. having to read through that slide. And it also tells me that in a real life face-to-face situation, that the person isn't well prepared because they're reading from the slides. You must know what you want to say prior to your presentation. You must know by heart what are the ideas that you want to share. So again, in a live situation, people use index cards. The index cards have keywords on them that you can look at now and then to order your thoughts, but you're engaging with your audience. So please don't clutter your slides with content. Those slides are there to guide your reader and to briefly highlight the points that you want to make. And then you fill in and you hang neat on that structure with the information that you're giving us. Don't make too many slides. A presentation with 40 slides is way too much. A presentation with 3 slides sounds a bit too little. So somewhere there where it makes sense, you're gonna do your stuff. We will do it here. We will record it. So we will see. Maybe you guys. I don't know if we're gonna share your faces as well. We'll see how bandwidth allows us. But yeah, practice it and make sure that things go smooth. Exercise or do a practice run or two. There's a lot of marks, guys. There's a lot of marks in this presentation component. So please, I don't want you to treat it lightly. Obviously, the good presentation will start with a good submission. So make sure you do outstanding work with the actual submission, that everything is covered there. I'm sitting with the content there. And then, of course, make sure that you do well with the presentation. I see the hands. Let's go do that quickly. All right. So Brad and Cameron, you both have hands. Cameron, let's start with you. Cameron, I can see you are unmuted, but I can't hear you.
How about now, sir?
Yep, I can hear you very clear. Thanks. Go
Awesome.
ahead.
Sorry, so I was just saying the exam for the subject for the semester is a seen exam. I think our only unseen exam is for finance.
Yeah. All right. So you guys will then get that pre-seen questions that you work with, and then you get a selection of them in an exam. That's typically how that sort of thing would work, right? Thanks, Cameron. Yes, Brad. Oh, excellent. No worries. All right. Then let's get into your presentations this evening. Are we going to do a ladies first thing? Kate, are you ready?
Last time it was also ladies.
Yeah, it's again, eh?
Okay. All right, let me see.
While you're setting up, I just want to say, guys, I hope that helped you. Please be mindful. Everything is being looked at, and everything. This is what I want to tell you guys. We're looking at everything in detail. So can your work stand up to scrutiny? That's the thing. The written stuff, the submitted stuff, the referencing style stuff, the styling stuff, the actual editing of your document, the readability of your document, how neat is everything. All those things creates an impression, and all of those things carry weight and are important. So let's look at that. We'll touch base on that again. I think we are, is this session 7 or 8? So we are pushing, hey? Kate, you're welcome to continue when you're ready.
All right, I have done some slides. Let me just share my screen. I'm going to focus on FNB. And can you hear me? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes, we
We
can.
can see your slides. You can maybe put it in a slideshow view,
All right.
if you can. Let's just test that.
Yeah.
There we
it?
go. All
Yeah.
righty, Kate, we can hear you well. You're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to focus on FNB, how they moved from the traditional banking to the digital banking. So my topic is the role of innovation in expanding the entrepreneurial envelope. So my case is going to be based on FNB. Okay, I'm trying to go to the next slide. Where do I go? Okay, my introduction. So the concept of the entrepreneur envelopes, it describes the boundaries within which the entrepreneurs or firm operate, and then it's also shaped by available resources, regulatory framework, customer expectations, and market dynamics. So in my case study, I have chosen FNB because I feel like it's one of the relevant thing that I can relate better with, and something which has moved from the traditional banking to the digital banking. And so so now FNB came up with this banking app, and the banking app, it made lives easier, more especially targeting the younger generation. And obviously, when it was launched, it was not something that maybe, let me say, everyone was happy with, because sometimes as people, we tend to shy away from technology. But as time went by, it became very effective because it also reduced the issue of queues when people wanted money and all that. And therefore, it actually made life to be easier. And then also the focus was on customers, and so that the service can be, like the customer service can be easier, and to reach out to everyone, whether you are here or somewhere. Like it's an easy app to use, in fact. And then obviously, I'm thinking that the owners, they were looking at it in the long-term strategy. And look at us right now, like nobody, as much as there are still people who are queuing on the, maybe in the queues, but it's only a few, and people are just coming along with the idea of having an app. And that has become very normal. So FNB innovations resulted in higher customer satisfaction and retention. Why? Because a lot of young people, like, we didn't like the idea of queuing. Can you imagine if you are in a hurry and then there is a long queue where you have to withdraw and all that? It became so easier for us to be using this app to send yourself money anytime you want it. You can buy with it and all that. So it became something that is so easier. And also, I think at this point, they managed to retain most of their customers, and also other banking facilities or services, they actually moved into that space because it was a better space, which resulted in a better customer service. And then also the transactions, like the transaction volumes, they grew in just 1 year, and the operational efficiency became much better, in fact. So for me, I see it as something, because obviously I think FNB is also leading in the digital experience, and therefore things are easier for customers, and it makes banking easier. It just makes everything to be easier, because the banking part is a very important part of our lives, and therefore we needed something like this. I know that other banking competitors, they have it, but I would say that FNB is a leading bank in that digital space. And then there were the findings by scholarly evidence on the banking app of South Africa. So there was the research confirmed that the key drivers of adoption system uses service quality and customer support. So it makes service quality, it makes customer support to be easier. And to the extent that should you lose your card or whatsoever, you can just block it immediately. There's no need for you to be panicking and all that compared to the olden days and so forth. But however, as well, there are still some barriers in the rural areas because some people are still afraid into this idea of technology, and also limited infrastructure awareness in digital security. Also, it has its disadvantages, but I would say that more advantages to us customers as well. And then it aligns with the approach to innovation as both technical and human-centered challenges. So it's based on human-centered. I mean, it's human-centered, let me just say, customer-centered. So yes, it has its own disadvantages, which I obviously listed a few, but then I also feel that people can be taught a lot about these things, we can, and I think this generation that is actually coming through is a generation of technology, which makes things to be easier. If you look at everyone right now, let me say children, they start with this issue of technology at a younger age. So it's not going to be an issue. It's just that the older generation, they sometimes find it harder to move with the way things are moving. They are afraid of how things are done, and it's only a few that are still doing things the traditional way. But otherwise, it's a good app. So in my conclusion, I would say that the digital journey, it has illustrated how strategic innovation has expanded in the entrepreneur envelope. So it was a very good strategic move for FNB to go through that process. And then it also enables organization to push past, it enables organization to push past traditional limits, redefine markets, and serve diverse customers. So for me, personally, I had found it very easier because I can even use it in the international. There was a time when I was in the US and I was using my app and everything. So it just made things easier, whether in South Africa, out of South Africa, then, life goes on. We don't have to struggle. And then also, the future success also depends on the ongoing investment in inclusive adaptive technologies. So this app, I feel that it was a good move, and it has brought the banking part of our lives to be so easier. We bank easier, although I have said in the beginning that there are some disadvantages, of course. However, those disadvantages are just things that we can conquer at the same time. So I feel that this move was an excellent move. Yeah. So thank you so much. And yeah, and
thank you.
Right.
That was thought-provoking. So what do we call a entrepreneurial, what is typical of an entrepreneurial venture? It's normally high returns, high uncertainties. It's normally small groups or individuals that develop and run a business or an enterprise. Corporate entrepreneurship, like the stuff you described to us now, is normally associated with the development of new products, new services in existing businesses. So if you look at Capitec Bank, Jannie Mouton started the business as a small entrepreneurial venture He was also a founding member of PSG. And now Capitec Bank is massive and Capitec Business is there. Do you guys know what do we call entrepreneurship within a company or an organization? Any guesses?
Is it not entrepreneurship, sir?
You are correct. You are 100% correct. So it's called entrepreneurship. And that is exactly, let me see if I can place the definition for you guys here. Entrepreneurship refers to a system within a company or an organization that allows employees to act out like entrepreneurs. So the sort of thing that Kate talks about is typically something that originates, again, with an individual or a small group of people that are inclined and sort of gravitate towards this high return, high level of uncertainty, exploring new things. And those are typically your individuals within a company that drives entrepreneurship, which we call intrapreneurship. Thanks a lot, Kate. Cameron, you up next, guys. We've got 15 minutes left, so let's see if we can fit the two of you in. Cameron, if you can, you're welcome to share. Thank you, Kate.
Can we see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. So entrepreneurship. Sorry.
Sorry, I'm just saying I'm going to mute. We can see you well. We can hear you well. You're
Excellent.
welcome to continue.
Entrepreneurship, it more applies for me in the space we play in. So entrepreneurship doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens more in the hustle. It happens in the side hustles that we have, in the informal trade, the everyday hustle for survival. This really will rely on innovation, how we will respond to the chaos, and not just about the ideas, but about the solutions and how we're going to approach each challenge and task that we get, even in our jobs and our daily activities. Within the entrepreneurial envelope and the space that shapes us, it involves creativity through innovation, no matter the odds, despite the odds that are generally stacked against us, especially within South African context, that really drives innovation within our space. As I touched on, creativity is linked heavily to innovation. Innovation starts with creativity. It's not necessarily about painting pictures, but it's about solving problems, real problems that are solved by real people. In a sense of entrepreneurship that starts with creativity, we take our education, our skills, and the available resources and combine them to create creative solutions to real problems. We can touch on this in the terms of like load shedding, as entrepreneurs and businesses implementing solar power to overcome this and innovate to approach the solution. We can also touch on it with a small example. There's a community not too far from here in Eersterus and Eastland, where they approach transport issues and the affordable transport issues by providing smaller taxi services on tuk-tuks and such to transport people within the community at an affordable price. Another example, just as a very local reference, we have Moab Brew, which is a South African craft beer company. The founder, he had 10 years experience with SAB, brewing beer, cut his teeth there, and his entrepreneurial drive actually went and empowered him to move into craft beer, which was at the stage where they started a very undeveloped market in South Africa. They pride themselves on empowerment, wealth creation, accountability. A good example for South African entrepreneur. So when it comes to the entrepreneurial innovation and change, it's not about necessarily the big things, but it's about the small things. Small shifts create big change. Innovation doesn't have to be massive. It just has to matter. Where we take it from corporate involvement like Pick n Pay, they give youth programs that gives young people a shot in retail, letting them cut their teeth in the retail trade at every level. Or we take something like Kasi Energy, which approaches power issues and no service delivery and infrastructure issues in townships and just in general by saying no grid, no problem. They sell solar kits door to door and will give you the necessary equipment to get onto solar power. Another example would be Kazang Pay, which goes under the broader name EasyPay. They approach money market in a retail aspect, providing money market to informal traders and townships and the smaller guy at grassroots, so that they can offer bus tickets, gaming vouchers, airtime sales at a lower level. Like I say, the small shifts in the right context can be pretty powerful. If we're touching on entrepreneur, especially in the South African context and within the space we play in, we have to touch on the environmental realities. These are real challenges that affect us in our overall journey as entrepreneurs, as innovators. Load shedding, red tape, crime, informal zoning, transport issues. Those are the things that we really have to address to overcome, to innovate against. There's a company that goes by Digibox. Digibox is offering storage solutions for all documents and all company requirement stuff that is aimed at more township and local orientation, that allows them to get onto a formal storage platform at affordable pricing. They also implement solar as backups for all their databases. Within the environmental space, we find ourselves with social boundaries as well, in terms of lack of education, lack of skills, a lack of employment opportunities, especially within the youth. But a crisis such as youth unemployment doesn't necessarily have to be a challenge. It can be an opportunity. We see with SDEA grants and skills development, providing funding for business ideas, entrepreneurs, and supporting them where they need it. And one of the challenges being funding. They come to the table. We also have the programs like the YES program. The YES program links youth with businesses for real work experience. So they are cultivating their own resources by empowering people, educating them, and giving them the know-how. So they're turning a crisis like youth unemployment into an opportunity and to a creative solution. Further into the corporate innovation space, and through corporate innovation, we will get social innovation. The corporates can't sit on the sidelines, especially in our environment. We see things like Woolworths coming to the table and helping small farmers go sustainable with their Go Sustainable program. Companies like ShopRite, where they're promoting township-made products and green sourcing, where they take it directly to the supplier and source locally, and actually create a supply chain that creates wealth and sustainable opportunities for businesses. We also have more broader examples like Amazon, where they're trying to impact the community by growing green, where they've invested into 20,000 electric delivery vehicles, which is being the Amazon vans, to try and make their carbon footprint less. So when big business gets involved, we know the community will have innovation. It's not necessarily charity, but it's more of a strategy for big business, but it's definitely needed. When we speak about innovation, we cannot ignore technology, especially in today's world, where we are innovating to survive. Technology really plays a big role to overcome challenges. We can see us moving from very low tech to high tech space, especially in the South African market. We've got companies like Yoco that have really empowered small businesses, empowered local businesses to develop with their cashless payment systems. That's basically card systems that they can provide to independent vendors without having it be attached to big card fees like banks. You've also got companies like Clummerworks, which is as I mentioned earlier, for data storage and implementing solar power. And there you go. We've also touched on solar power, as mentioned earlier. So what are we saying? We're saying that innovation isn't just a buzzword. It's the way forward. It's rooted in reality. It's real people challenging challenges with innovative solutions, innovative with being creativity. It's driven by creativity, and it's focused on impact. So we're attempting to reshape society, dreams, communities. The challenge is more towards myself as an entrepreneur and as an innovator, is the drive towards people, towards challenge, inner locus, and then overcoming it. If I could have anything change, I would say we should prioritize time more in South Africa in the space. It's a resource that we don't always take cognizance of. I think it's taken for granted with a lot of red tape, with a lot of inefficiencies. It's really one resource that we should get behind prioritizing so that we don't have such high opportunity costs. Lastly, I think red tape in banking would also change the space. Just if we removed red tape, we could get funding to the people that need it most, and businesses and entrepreneurs, so that we could really innovate. So I think let's stop waiting for the big idea and start making meaningful moves today. Thank you.
Wow. Listen, I see we are sort of going to run out of time. Brad, are you comfortable in going yours with us next week?
Yeah, that's fine. I could do it now, but then I would be pushing it because I know we have a library session now at 7 o'clock as well.
That's true. So I don't wanna push you. Let's leave yours for next week. Listen, what did you guys think about Cam's presentation?
Yeah, I thought it was quite insightful, especially because of how broad it was. It was broad, but also angled at the right places. Like a lot of this, the solar as well. It's a big innovation for us. I mean, I also remember there were no solar companies in this country. Obviously, there were, but they weren't really noticeable. And then all of our issues came with load shedding and all the innovation through load shedding, getting products from China, getting products from India, bringing it to the country, doing it locally. And then, yeah, now there's how many solar places now that are still transacting heavily. So I have noticed that quite a while. Pardon?
Yeah. Kate,
Yeah.
your thoughts on Cam's presentation?
Yeah, I agree with Brad to say it was very insightful. And I also wanted to speak about the issue of load shedding that he touched about the solar panels and everything. Yeah, it was a good presentation.
Right, I agree. I also liked it. Kate, I liked yours as well. Cameron, I liked yours. It was interesting. And your minimal use of text was nice. Your graphics were interesting. So in most of your slides, I think all of them actually, there was something that caught my eye. I said, that's interesting. That's an interesting little thing you put in there. That was nicely incorporated. Again, what you emphasized is these people work with real needs. So mostly entrepreneurs are people that look at real needs. They are normally very pragmatic. They are people that see problems. And the interesting thing is where many people push problems away, entrepreneurs see the opportunity in problems. So they are problem solvers. That being said, the market is brutal, hey? So that's why you'll often see that a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes have a long resume of failures. And they will tell you, listen, my business failed and that one failed, but now I'm onto something. Because they keep on trying. But most of them have been have drawn the short end of market forces, right? It's interesting what you said about banking. You know, the other day I wanted to get change for our business in a bank. The first Absa branch that I walked in treated me like a criminal, almost. Listen, how do you dare walk into the branch? Yeah, sorry, I'm saying Absa. We don't do that. Only we only make change on Mondays and Fridays. I said, my goodness, we do business 5 days a week. Why do you guys only do this on Mondays and Fridays? Then I went to a next Absa branch, a bigger branch. And here it was such a schlep to get a change. I've got an account. I had my card, presented my card, but it was also a bit of a, it felt like I wasn't a valued customer. And we had to go through all sorts of stuffies. And again, almost felt that there was a degree of shame put on me because I asked for change in doing business. So yeah, it's interesting, eh? The banking industry, Kate, and you touched on that as well. Innovation is one thing, but what if tech-centeredness overrides people-centeredness, because it's all about people, eh? People are social beings and so on. So innovation in conjunction with having a strong people focus. Another takeaway from your presentation is that we are stewards of time and that we should be responsible stewards of time. Guys, I'm going to let you off, Dirk. You've got something else. Thank you very much. See you next time. Well
Thanks, guys.
done, and take care. Cheers.
Thanks, Doc. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Doc.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.